Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight, a judicial review granted to take a closer look at oil drilling in the country. Cabinet may consider recommendations to increase NIB contributions. We'll tell you why. Bahamians remember Sandals founder and chairman Gordon Butch Stewart. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina Dragovich. Topping news tonight, exploratory oil drilling in Bahamian waters will continue after Supreme Court Justice Petra Hannah Adderley refused an application to stay drilling activities. However, the justice granting leave for judicial review proceedings against the government's decision to authorize drilling by Bahamas Petroleum Company. Kyle Joaquin has the latest.
This very important matter to the public is going to be aired in court. There will be full transparency.
Both sides walked away with somewhat of a victory. While their wish to have the exploratory oil drilling by Bahamas Petroleum Company halted was not granted, Fred Smith QC and his clients, Waterkeeper Bahamas Limited and Coalition to Save Clifton Bay, are pleased about the outcome of their application to have a judicial review into the government's decision to authorize the drilling. Smith says finally, all will be brought to light.
To drill for oil, to pierce the belly of Mother Nature, and to extract oil and possibly destroy our environment. For goodness sake, it's not just a sign-off by somebody behind closed doors, because we still don't know what those agreements say. What did our governments agree to?
Exploratory oil drilling 90 miles west off the coast of Andros has been underway for 2 weeks now. In that regard, BPC has been successful in its preventing a halt to that drilling, which attorneys said was impossible. In her ruling, Justice Hannah Adderley said the environmental group's wait-and-see strategy regarding government's February and April decisions were a grave miscalculation. However, she found that the reasons for extension were good enough. And now everything proceeds to a full judicial review set for February 17th and 18th. During her ruling today, the Supreme Court Justice also accepted the motion to amend by Smith to add the Town Planning Committee as a party in the matter. Smith said the committee has a statutory obligation mandated by Parliament to stop what he called an illegal process.
Court will determine some very important issues about whether the Planning and Subdivision Act applies underwater, whether the Conservation and Protection of the Physical Landscape Act requires BPC to get an excavation drilling permit.
As for BPC's application to be added as a party, hearing has been set for January 14th. During the hearing, it was argued by both BPC and government attorneys that the drilling is simply to determine if there is in fact oil in the Bahamas. However, Smith said all environmentalists have been asking for was a fair review of the authorization process, which must now be heard in court.
The government is going to have to evidence and demonstrate that they did in fact have the required consultation that the law requires so that the Bahamian people can participate in this process.
For Our News, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Well, the National Insurance Board may have to increase contributions as a result of the exorbitant payouts required over the past 16 months, according to the minister responsible for national insurance, Brensel Roll. Jasmine Brown reports.
The NIB minister says the fact of the matter is the National Insurance Board has been hit hard by Hurricane Dorian and then the COVID-19 pandemic. He says for those reasons that a recommendation has been made more recently.
During Dorian and this pandemic, the resources and the funding to the board has been diminished. And we've got to make a decision to make sure the board continues to be able to serve. And that may mean consideration will be given to the recommendation that has been advanced to us many times.
Roll told reporters that even before those events, it had been recommended that contributions be increased to maintain the fund.
That recommendation has been made from 2015, I believe, and it's been out there. To be quite frank with you, neither the PLP or the FNM has been bold enough take that back to the public.
Last month, the Ministry of Finance revealed that $97.5 million had been paid out in unemployment benefits by NIB, with another $91.9 million paid out through the government-funded Unemployment Assistance Program, which offers extended assistance for those still requiring it following the 13 weeks of NIB benefit. Roll said while the government has not yet made any decision as it relates to an increase, he believes it's a conversation that needs to happen.
From my perspective, I'd like to get a conversation that's national in scope, and the person with the best platform in this case is members of the media.
The COVID-19 pandemic, which saw the global travel industry come to a near halt, came on the heels of Hurricane Dorian. The resulting shutdown of resorts and other tourism-dependent businesses, combined with the closure of other non-essential businesses due to the emergency orders, saw unemployment rates soar to an estimated 40% of the Bahamas. Roll said given the level of assistance the government and NIB have provided in the last 9 months, the public may be more open to contributing more to NIB. Reporting for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
And tributes pouring in for Sandals founder and chairman Gordon "Butch" Stewart, who passed away Monday at age 79. The well-known all-inclusive luxury vacation brand has properties in Exuma and New Providence. Stewart's son, Adam Stewart, said in a memo, "News of his death seems almost unbelievable since our chairman was as involved and forward-thinking as ever." He adds his father chose to keep a very recent health diagnosis private. Stewart describes his father as an entrepreneur, statesman, dreamer, a singular personality, and an unstoppable force who reveled in defying the odds and exceeding expectations. Tourism Minister Dionisio D'Aguilar says he spoke with Adam on Tuesday morning.
WhatsApped with his son Adam this morning to offer the condolences of the Ministry of Tourism and the country as a whole. Butch Stewart was a captain of tourism in the Caribbean. His passing is enormously tragic. He was innovative, creative, full of energy, always ready to start something new, do something different in the Caribbean.
Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis said in a statement, Stewart was a great friend and lover of the islands of the Bahamas and the Bahamian people. Butch Stewart was an intrepid innovator. He was the ultimate dream catcher who was happy to listen to the ideas of others. Former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram remembered the hotelier as an astute tourism businessman. He said Butch was, in my estimation, the preeminent Caribbean hotelier. His success in competing with some of the largest international hotel brands is testimony to that achievement. And a police officer and a suspect have been airlifted to the capital after a scuffle in Stanyard Creek, Andros. Police say they have launched an investigation into the matter. Reports are shortly after 9 this morning, officers from Fresh Creek Police Station were conducting inquiries in the settlement of Stanyard Creek. Police say they approached a man and informed him of a complaint that was made against him. As the officers attempted to arrest the man, a struggle ensued between the suspect and one of the officers. During that struggle, the suspect disarmed the officer and allegedly discharged several rounds, one of which struck the officer, injuring him in the left leg. Police say another officer produced his service weapon and shot the suspect, injuring him. He was subdued and the firearm was retrieved. Both the officer and the suspect are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries here in Nassau. An 18-year-old's dream of becoming an entrepreneur died when she was shot dead on Sunday. Her family and friends describe her as honest and loyal. Jared Higgs tells us more.
The woman who was killed in Treasure Key, Abaco on Sunday is 18-year-old Jilny Fluramy, a 2020 high school graduate.
She is loving, kind, an honest friend. She's very caring.
Police say Fluramy was shot in the head at her home on Farm Road, Treasure Key, Abaco. Her 13-year-old brother was also shot in the abdomen and is in critical condition, according to older sister, 20-year-old Wilneed Fluramy. We spoke to her over the phone, and she says the 8th grader is fighting to pull through.
He just was trying, try the ball. Like, he just learned how to play basketball and all that stuff, and that was it.
But Fluramy's death came as a shock to the family. Her older sister described her as an aspiring entrepreneur who had already purchased her first stock for her new clothing business.
Her stuff for her clothing business to start, all them already get here like yesterday. They came here yesterday. So she was trying to start her own business, like her own clothing business. That's what she wanted to do. She just learned how to drive just so she could start that.
She says her sister was courageous and wanted to eventually live abroad.
She's a soldier. I feel like she's a part of my body that I will never replace. And then she's very nice, funny, but if you get on her nerves, she will cuss you out.
Fleur-Me's best friend, 23-year-old Getly St. Fleur, agreed about the woman's ambition and bravery. She says Fleur-Me was the godmother to her child, and she wasn't your average 18-year-old.
She was just like a cool, honest person and a very quiet person. It's like when you get to know her, then you'll know what kind of a good friend she is. Like I said, she wasn't just a friend to me. She's like my little sister.
Sadly, the grieving friend is left with some regrets.
That one time, I honestly wish I had gone there and take her from there if I knew what happened.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
Thanks, Jared. Partly cloudy skies outside the Our News studios. Greg Thompson is in our weather studio with the details.
Thanks, Christina. I'm meteorologist Greg Thompson with your first look at weather. Beautiful evening setting up outside our studios. Temperatures are cooling down rather nicely. They're in the low 70s. 72 is our current temperature with just a few clouds outside. Almost clear skies. Winds will fall off. They are now out of the northwest at 5 knots. Feels like temperature actually a few degrees cooler at 70 degrees. Satellite view. Frontal boundary that pushed through the northwest Bahamas, now across the central Bahamas. Some clouds, some isolated showers associated with that system. But the system will continue to progress towards the southeast, moving to the southeast Bahamas tonight. That's your first look at weather. Your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, government considers whether COVID-19 vaccinations should be required for students. Plus, why one church leader is pushing for stiffer penalties for criminals. Stay tuned.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
Amid growing concerns over a new variant of COVID-19, Health Minister Renward Wells says shutdowns and travel restrictions didn't stop the virus from making its way here back in March. And the reality is the new variant would likely get in as well. He also points out that despite having a vaccine, the United Kingdom has still imposed a lockdown. Here in the Bahamas, Wells reveals that government is considering whether the COVID-19 vaccine will be mandatory for children attending school.
There's a list of vaccines already that folks take in order to go to school. Okay? We are in discussions about it, but obviously, if that decision is made, we will come back and tell the Bahamian people. But we don't require you to go to school. We don't require you to take the flu vaccine to go to school. Okay? There are some vaccines that are required, and there are some vaccines that are not. The flu vaccine is not required.
The Bahamas government is monitoring the global spread of the new strain of COVID-19, but has no immediate plans to restrict travel.
We are, as I said, monitoring the circumstance, and we have our protocols at the border, and we're hoping, as I said, that these protocols will be adequate to be able to slow down the progression of this new strain into the country.
Meanwhile, some private schools have made the decision to resume in-person learning with strict guidelines to keep students and staff safe. Berthany McDermott has that.
After months of virtual learning, some students of Queen's College and Catholic schools on New Providence and Abaco returned to the classroom Tuesday morning. According to school heads, 30% of preschool and primary school students will be returning to the classroom at a time.
So we're bringing back a third of the students at a time at a staggered pace so that they can have the opportunity to work one-on-one with their teachers in a safe environment.
Ministry of Education gave us permission to open with a limited enrollment. Our schools, of course, on Grand Bahama was already opened. And so we basically had that as a test guide for us.
According to QC Principal Reverend Henry Knowles, as the COVID-19 climate improves in the country, the school will look to have more students return to the classroom. The school has implemented a number of safety measures in hopes of keeping students safe, like plexiglasses in classrooms, hand washing and sanitizing stations throughout the campus, and staggered break times. Now, in the event a student or staff member becomes ill, the school's nurse, Taylor Monroe, says a plan has been put in place to ensure everyone is safe.
If a child becomes ill while on campus, they will come straight to the health center. I will escort the child from the classroom to the health center. We do have a fully equipped isolation room with a separate ventilation system. I will do an assessment on the child, and then the parents will be contacted immediately. If we need further consultation, we do have a relationship that we're developing with Doctors Hospital. We do have video conferencing equipment, so we'll be able to consult with them.
As for Catholic schools, Board Director Claudette Roll says the Catholic Board has also implemented a detailed plan.
First, we have to isolate the individual. The nurses would make contact with the parents and the Ministry of Health.
For those parents who may still be fearful about allowing their children to resume in-person learning amid the global pandemic, Knowles had this bit of encouragement.
It is up to you for schools to open. It's up to you for schools to stay open. We have encouraged our staff, hey, if you do not feel well, stay home. We are going to trust you as a professional because we don't want an outbreak. As much as we use hand sanitizers, as much as we use PPEs, as much as we use social distancing, we still know that it's each individual's responsibility.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Berthany McDermott.
Stiffer penalties may be needed to curb violent crime in the country, according to the head of the Bahamas Christian Council. Giorgio Bain explains.
While the Bahamas Christian Council remains divided on whether the death penalty should be reinstated, President Bishop Delton Fernandez is calling for stiffer penalties amid a violent start to the new year.
We've been divided for a long time on the issue of the death penalty, but we must find some penalty. And the penalty must be at a place where there's some fear of crime. In our different regions around, they don't use the heinous approach of hanging. They use lethal injection. I'm not saying that that's the answer, but I am saying that we have to find what is going to be that penalty for your crime that deters you from doing it again.
And as the religious community calls for stiffer penalties for those who commit the crimes, those who work with the families of murder victims are calling for the nation to bind together to stop these heinous crimes before it's too late. With the country marking 10 murders in less than 6 days, a tearful president of the organization known as FOAM, Families of All Murder Victims, Candy Gibson, pleaded with those hell-bent on carrying out such crimes to remember those who are truly impacted by their actions, the victims' children.
They ain't asked to go to preschool that first time without their daddy or their mommy. They ain't asked to go to primary school. They ain't asked to have PTA meeting without their mommy or daddy showing up because their daddy's no longer here because that demon called murder snatched them.
According to Gibson, the recent acts of violence are not surprising and are linked to acts of retaliation that must come to an end.
We can start from the last, where it happened last year. Obviously, you can see the trend from a name brand person get killed. You could expect the retaliation. You could expect what can happen next. You understand me? We have women are being killed by someone known to them, not a stranger, someone known to them or their family. What is my take? It has to stop.
These problems are not new, according to Gibson, who called on all stakeholders to take a closer look at local communities.
We have spot shotters, and sometimes I probably know the shots gone before the spot shotter probably detect it. What we doing? We have to now invest monies in the program that's going to get these young men mentally. Because if you ask them right now what they're fighting for, they can't even tell you.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Giorgio Bain.
There's more news on the way, but first, your RF Market Watch.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
Surrey drivers turn to an unlikely source to feed their horses. Plus, what is Bahamian baller Buddy Hield up to? The details when our news returns.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
This is our news. Welcome back. Surrey drivers and their horses have been out of work for nearly a year. Jillian Gray tells us how they're keeping their tables and troughs full.
The click-clacks of hooves have not been heard on the streets of New Providence since March 2020. Horse and Surrey tours were as usual a sight on the streets as a Honda or Nissan March, but since the pandemic, they've all but disappeared.
It's been rough, no work, horses have beat.
Golden Child, Big Boy, Island Luck, Miracle, Pegasus, and Stapper are all owned by Mauricio Simonet. He's been in the horse and Surrey industry for 15 years and said it's been a long few months.
Ends meet here and there, you know. The NIB contribution every 2 weeks they give out $200 every 2 weeks. You try to make that work as much as can make that work.
Though hotels are rebounding, that doesn't provide a glimmer of hope, as it's the cruise ship passengers who would usually patronize the Surrey drivers. Prince George Wharf, their usual parking spot, is under construction, and Simonet says there's been little communication on where Surreys will park until that project is complete.
To say what is taking place, when we can move back in, what is what, nothing is concrete yet.
Despite being strapped for cash, the Surrey drivers gave back by partnering with the non-profit Dream Chasers to give out care packages during the holidays.
Golden Child, Pegasus, and all of the horses here are ready to get back to work, but with no telling when that's going to be, they're going to have to depend on the generosity of others for a little while longer.
Thanks for the help of the Humane Society, donations of hay and feed. It goes a long way, you know, from the pandemic start, they've been helping us a lot and keeping the animals and we're feeding them and stuff like that. So, as I said, it's rough. Everybody knows it's rough. Yeah. But the animals got eaten.
The horses get a break from their quarantine time with exercise on the beach, which Simonet says could open up a new stream of revenue.
Once guests on the beach, they like the pet horses. Even some of our own natives, the kids on the beach, they come in, how much you charge to take a picture with your horse out there? So things that also help.
Reporting for our news, I'm Jillian Gray.
Thanks, Jillian. Tonight in sports, the Ole Miss Lady Rebels suffering their first loss of the season in college basketball, and Buddy Hield and the Kings take on the Warriors. Marcellus Hall has that.
All right, thanks so much, Christina. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. There is a saying that there is no such thing as perfection, always room for improvement. Well, the Ole Miss Lady Rebels, under the direction of head coach Yolette McEwen, were looking to prove that wrong. They were perfect going into last night's game against the LSU Lady Tigers. Let's take a look and see exactly how that turned out. Bahamian Division I ladies basketball coach Yolette McEwen leading her Ole Miss Lady Rebels squad against LSU last night. Lady Rebels 6-0. They were looking to stay undefeated on the young season. This one, a tight contest, went right down to the wire. Back and forth the entire way. Game tied at 64. Ole Miss chance for the win in regulation, but they can't make the basket. They go to overtime. Tigers would eventually persevere as they get the victory, 77-69. The loss, the first of the year for the Lady Rebels. They dropped to 6-1. Their next game on Thursday versus Auburn. Buddy Hield and the Kings also in action last night. They took on the Golden State Warriors. Rough night shooting for Buddy. Shot just 3 of 12 from the floor. Finished with 10 points, 6 rebounds, and 1 assist. A Kimmin losing cause. They get the loss here, 137-106 in blowout fashion. Kings now 3-4 in the year. Next up, a game against the Chicago Bulls. That comes your way tomorrow night. All right, so there you have it. We'll give you details on what else is happening with our Bahamian athletes as this week progresses. Meanwhile, that's your check on sports for tonight. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Christina.
Thanks, Marcellus. Police on Grand Bahama honor fallen colleagues. That's coming up when our news returns.
Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight.
COVID-19 remains a serious threat.
Coronavirus COVID-19 has disrupted our economy, tourism industry, educational system, and put our healthcare facilities and professionals on high alert. Are you prepared? Do you have all the facts? Stay tuned to this network for the very latest news and information on this global pandemic.
Welcome back to our news. Looks like beautiful conditions are ahead. Here's Greg Thompson back in the weather studio.
Thanks again, Christina. Now, second look at weather, we take a look around the island's satellite view. That frontal boundary that's pushed into the central Bahamas, weakening as it pushes towards the southeast. Some isolated showers associated with that system. Front will continue to move into the southeast Bahamas later tonight and into tomorrow, but high pressure behind that will generate some very nice conditions across the islands before we do see another frontal boundary by the end of the week. Your boating forecast for the northwest and central Bahamas tonight through tomorrow. Your winds will be out of the northwest and north at 10 to 15 knots, seas running 2 to 4 feet over the ocean. While in the southeast Bahamas, we expect those winds to be light and variable. Seas will be less than 2 feet. High tide will be at 12:58 in the morning. Here's a look now at your national forecast. A look now at your extended forecast through Sunday. That's a look at our weather. Have a safe night, everyone. Christina?
Thanks, Greg. A somber ceremony of remembrance as officers on Grand Bahama laid a wreath to honor their fallen colleagues. The names of more than a dozen officers who passed away in 2020 were placed at the base of a flag by Assistant Commissioner of Police Ashton Greenslade.
We have an avenue where we seek professional counseling. We allow them to go to the force chaplain, Father Davies, and sometimes he recommends that they go further. So we take care of our officers and we ensure that they're doing good and they up to standard once they lose a colleague in the line of duty.
Thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Christina Dragovich. We'll see you right back here tomorrow night. Have a beautiful evening, Bahamas.